Good evening and welcome to episode number. What are we up to here? My bad. Smarter Web Wednesdays number 2. Last week I had Andrew Webley, the CEO, on, and that was great. I re-listened to that interview today. Andrew had a lot of interesting things to say. You can find that on my YouTube channel. Today I have one of my good friends, one of the smartest and probably most underrated analyst, in my opinion, Brian Brookshire, who has been on a Metaplanet Roundtable a couple of times, always has great insights. And Brian has done his own deep dive analysis of smarter web companies. So that's why we're here today. Brian will take us through his thoughts on the thesis on smarter web companies. So welcome, Brian. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's funny. You talk about me being underrated. Last year someone commented that Brian was underrated. And so one of my explicit goals for this year is to move up from being underrated to appropriately rated.
Appropriately rated. Let's make Brian appropriately rated. That's the target for 2025. I think that should be our Q3 target. And then we'll set a new target for Q4, Brian. Something even more.
We'll have to increase the MNAV on the rating.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
We got to get you higher. So some of my friends in a little Signal chat group where we focused on LBEs. It started with MSTR degeneracy last year. Degeneracy. They said I should do a Bitcoin treasury on the podcast, and that my what was it? Wait, I gotta find it. Just real quick, bear with me. My PNAV is off the charts right now, and PNAV is pot to net asset value, and I can confirm there is no net asset value here on Smarter Web Wednesdays, but here we are. We have brain firepower from Brian. So Brian, let's have you take us through your thoughts on Smarter Web company here on Smarter Web Wednesdays. First of all, are you invested in SWC at this point in time?
Yes, I do have a position I'm trading around for Smarter Web company.
Okay, sounds good. And full disclaimer, so do I. In short, SWC is by its community named the fastest horse right now globally in this space of companies accumulating Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And I was in Prague for BTC Prague when Saylor name dropped SWC and H100. And by the way, the SEO, sorry, not the SEO, I used to do SEO. The CEO of H100, Mr. Anderson, will be on my channel on Monday at 10 a.m. Central European time. Go figure. But Brian, let's get to you and your analysis. That's why we're here today. That's what people want to hear, including myself.
Sure. So maybe we could dive in with some of the newer topics that have come up and then kind of work backwards to how we arrived there. One of the interesting things that is happening right now that you talked about with Andrew on your call as well is that they have announced their new ATM-like program. And I think that is a very critical step in their journey. Because one of the things that I've been watching with all these new international LBEs is how they localize the plan. And the early stages of capital raising for Smarter Web used basically two different prongs. They used what are called RAPs, which is a very UK specific thing. I believe it stands for Winter Flood Retail Access Platform, which as it sounds is a retail focused offer. And they use these accelerated book builds, which are targeted at institutional investors. And the way these work, it's not exactly a private placement. It's kind of a hybrid. It's almost like IPOing new shares a little bit. And basically the way it works is after the market closes, they, the brokers who facilitate these programs open up the platform for a few hours to, people can sign up for an allocation of shares. And then you've got this fundraise that's done basically in a night. And I don't know exactly how quickly the funds closed, but I think it was the case. You basically had to have the cash on hand in order to ask for an allocation.
But Brian, what's the advantage of that compared to, say, Strategies ATM on NASDAQ?
Right. So yeah, there's strengths and limitations to it, and that's where I want to maybe talk about the shift to the ATM that's coming to do a proper comparison with the ATM. One of the limitations of that system is that it's not as flexible as something like an ATM, because basically they have to decide, okay, we're going to raise capital. When are we going to raise capital? We've got to open it up. We've got a 4-hour window. We've got to try to close everything. And there's a lot of, it's very administrative heavy to try to do these, and it's not something that really scales. So they found a bridge to a new system that does scales with their ATM-like program. And the ATM-like program is, let me make sure I say the name right. It's their meaning Smarter Web's lead broker, Tennyson Securities, has brokered a deal with Shard Merchant Capital to execute this ATM-like program. And it works sort of similar to the way that Metaplanet has set up their moving strike warrants and how the blockchain group has set up their ATM-like program, where essentially the partner that is executing the plan, they're able to essentially buy shares at yesterday's close price and then sell them into the market today. And so that is a lot more flexible structure for raising capital by selling new shares into the market. Now, there are pros and cons to that versus, a full-blown US style ATM. One of the pros, I think, is that the way it's structured and the way it is communicated to market is much more investor friendly. That just because of the nature of the program, it means that the broker who's executing this will always be selling into strength. They're never going to sell on down day because it wouldn't make any sense. They would lose money on it. Also, it's written right in the terms that the broker is limited to 20% of daily volume, which actually is a significant number, but depending on what daily volume looks like, it could potentially be done. On the con side, it's potentially more expensive. If for a MicroStrategy style ATM, I think they're just paying a flat percentage of whatever the shares issued are. So they might, the partners executing that, they might be taking 3% market making fee or something like that. Not exactly sure what it is, but it's always just, I'm pretty sure it's always just that percentage. Whereas with this ATM-like program, let's say price jumps 50% next day, the partner who is executing that, Shard Capital, they're able to capture a much larger spread than it would be if they were just, say, getting a 3% execution fee. But that said, the program is new. We have seen Metaplanet go through many different iterations of this type of program. Metaplanet with their moving strike warrants, they've done the setup such that they're in a similar setup where warrants could be executed at the previous day's close. The current ones they've issued, it's a 3-day average, and some of them have a premium on them. It's a 3-day average, plus 2%. So as this program develops, I think there's more room to work with the terms and to get more favorable terms for Smarter Web that will narrow the spread and make that a little bit more favorable for them. But even with all that, it's still definitely well worth it to have much more flexibility into how they can issue capital into the market, how they can issue new shares in the market to raise capital, and I think is a very good next step for them in their journey. So maybe take a breather there and see if you have any comments on that part.
No, I appreciate that, Brian. My next thoughts were, well, so first of all, overall, this is about you getting a chance to share, your train of thought and your analysis and why you've taken a position in SWC. So you can, in overall, set the direction and the agenda for the points you want to get through. But thank you for the answer on that. My next question from me naturally would be, all right, so there's different shiny rockets out there. There's Metaplanet, which I do believe you also hold a position in. And you have a position in SWC. But so, the ATM you've explained now, but why do you have a position in SWC? What do you like about it? Why are you putting your money at risk, so to speak? And
sure. Yeah, my broader theme about the market right now is that these international plays are much more interesting than number 2 through 10 on the U.S. leaderboard. It's who's going to be number 1 in the international markets, because that unloads a whole new pool of capital to Bitcoin. Some of that's orthogonal to the performance of the company. It's just something that's great for Bitcoin. But when I'm looking through these, I'm thinking, okay, who are the largest markets in the world? Who have some of the most restrictive access to Bitcoin in the world? And the UK market ticks a lot of those boxes. It's a large, well-established capital market. The Bitcoin exposure people are able to get right now is fairly limited within their tax advantage accounts, their ISAs and their SIPs, which I believe are like the UK equivalent of like an IRA account. Pretty much the only thing they can buy domestically is Bitcoin treasury companies. It was just a Smarter Web company. There's a few others now, but that's really the only way to get Bitcoin exposure. And ETFs might come eventually, but they're not available to retail currently, as far as I'm aware. So to me, it's a combination of, okay, it's a really large market. There's a very strong appetite for Bitcoin exposure. There is a general lack of available yield elsewhere. And I think the growth of the company stock and the speed at which they've been able to accelerate their Bitcoin accumulation really proves out that the right combination of factors is there for a Bitcoin treasury company to do really well in the UK market.
Yeah, it's I was not ignoring SWC, but I wasn't buying any because they obviously they came from a small level of, I think, first purchase maybe 4 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin or whatever, and they were going vertical, and I kept telling myself, well, they're going vertical because it's early on, but they kept going vertical, and that's why last Tuesday I took a small position in SWC, and I think at this point where they are holding more than 500 Bitcoin, the fact that they can increase that the BTC yield is so high, the growth in the amount of Bitcoin per share, that it's still so aggressive makes me think, well, there's something interesting happening here, and if they can keep this speed up, even if it slows down, there's room for it to slow down somewhat, and still they'll be growing extremely aggressive. If I'm sure you agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I tend to think about these companies in general is that we have a data point already. We have Metaplanet as a data point for what a small growing Bitcoin treasury company can do. So my general thesis is that, barring any kind of macro catastrophe, a sufficiently large market can, a Bitcoin treasury company can grow into a $10 billion company within 2 years within a sufficiently large market. That's my opinion. It's definitely not, financial advice at all. And, if you look at where Smarter Web company is right now and where they could be, another 6 months to a year down the line, within that initial 2-year period, I think there's still quite a bit of room to run. And I think even just today we're going to see proved out how much fundraising capacity they still have. Each successive fundraise they've done has they've been targeting, it looks like, about 50% of the size of their existing NAV on their fundraises, and the fundraises have been consistently upsized, 50 to 100%. And the last fundraise they raised, I think the target was like 15 million pounds, and they raised almost 30 million pounds, and that was close to doubling their NAV. And today, just before we got on the call here, they announced another fundraise that's going to be, target minimum 30 million pounds. And if they could raise 60, it might not be the high again, but if they could do that, that would, pretty close to, actually would more than double their current NAV. And of course, when you're talking about the NAV with Smarter Web Company, one of the things that you have to pay close attention to, actually, this might be a good point to bring up the chart.
Yeah, should I bring up the chart we spoke about before we went live?
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to I don't recall his.
Yes, Bitcoin B21. It goes by Nick, and then his X handle is at Bitcoin B21. He's made. I'm sure I read the URL right.
Yeah. So the smartinvestmentguy.com. Shout out to you. Making a website with a bunch of different, there's dashboard, MNAV, all these different things. And we're going to take a look at the MNAV calculation details, which I think he updates manually daily by end of market. So you wanted to discuss something here, right, Brian?
Yeah. So the thing I want to highlight on this chart is that when you're thinking about the net asset value for a Smarter Web Company, you can't just look at the Bitcoin value, because one of the things they do that's a little bit different is they hold a significant cash position. So like you can see on this chart, the BTC value is about $57 million, but then they also have, $17.5 million cash position. So, as a percentage, that's pretty significant. So, total NAV now about 75 million. And so if they raised,
so tell us, Brian, because if this calculation of 16.5 MNAV doesn't include the cash, but we know that Andrew is putting that cash.
This number does include the cash.
It does include it. All right. So yeah. we are at a realistic 16.5 MNAV. Got it.
Right. And yeah, so with their capital raise today, let's say they raised, let's say they actually, doubled the target amount. They raised close to 60 million pounds. That would be enough cash to basically double their total NAV again and cut their MNAV in half.
So Brian, tell me, how is it possible for Andrew and SWC to raise so much funds compared to where they were at? It's very aggressive. It's what we as investors love, of course, and that's why there's a premium on the stock higher than MetaPlanet, for instance. The MNAV is more than twice of MetaPlanet, which is, they're killing it. How can he raise so much funds compared to what they're holding? I mean, it's the dream for most investors, right?
Right. I mean, part of it is starting at a smaller size. It's much easier to do, even a 60 million pound raise than it is to go out and raise $1 billion. So just to be fair, some of it is starting from a lower base, and if you look at the way MNAVs kind of, if you look at the trajectory of MNAVs over time, they do come down. You can't grow exponentially forever. But the question is, how long can you grow exponentially? And after that point, does growth still look good? A lot of times it does. So part of it is, like I said, part of it size, and I think another part of it is just a strong demand from the UK market. People want Bitcoin exposure. I think Andrew is a great front man for the company. People really like him. He's communicated well with the market. He's built a lot of trust with the shareholder base. He's in the way he communicates, he's looking out for retail and trying to make sure that everybody's pleased with the stock they're holding. So it's a combination of a lot of factors that helps the investment dollars keep rolling in and keeps them at the top of the UK leaderboard.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's my shout out to you, Andrew. I don't know if you're watching. You're so busy you can't watch all the content, but my communication back and forth with Andrew is it's unbelievable how fast that he responds anytime I send an email. like, hey, how about next Wednesday? Do you want to do another Smarter Web Wednesdays and set the timing down and everything? He's so on top of it. It's a great. There's a lot of very healthy signs there from Andrew, and as investors, we're looking at all of it.
For sure. I think, of the CEOs of Bitcoin treasury companies right now, I think he's the one who has by far been the most involved with the online community, particularly the X community. He's in there, he's engaging with posts. He's been on multiple podcasts, spaces. There's the Smarter Web community on X, Our Good Life UK. He's got a weekly, what happened in Smarter Web podcast, and Andrew's been on almost every show. So he's been very, very generous with his time, communicating with community on X. And I think there's more to it. It's not just the fact that he's generous with his time. The other good thing about a CEO doing that is that they're very in touch with their investor base, and they know what people are thinking, and they're able to better respond to it and to manage the company in such a way that is going to please investors.
Absolutely. So I wanna just talk about this this graph with you. This one. Whoa, where did it? Oh yeah, I gotta just. There we go. This was one of the graphs, I guess, that I was looking at, where it was just hard to ignore. So it's essentially the amount of Bitcoin on the balance sheet of these different companies. So the steeper the curve is, the more aggressive in terms of percentage. They're stacking. The higher in percentage terms is the BTC yield. One of our favorites is the dark yellow there, Metaplanet, which is going for its size quite aggressively upwards. And they're actually, apart from that, we'll talk about that, I think, next week, Brian. If you're it sounds like you're ready to be back on Metaplanet Roundtable next Tuesday. I think we're expecting some big buys from them over the next couple of days. But if you look at the red one starting down in the bottom right corner, more or less, it is very steep, and that is because of the incredible speed of Bitcoin accumulation on the balance sheet. There's one other that looks very interesting, and that's the light blue H100. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the program, but a lot of people have joined, Mr. Anderson, the CEO of H100, will be on this YouTube channel Monday, 10 a.m. Central European Time. And Andrew Webley, CEO of the company we're talking about now, SWC, will be back Wednesday next week. And by the way, Alexander from ALTBG will be on Thursday next week. Why rest on the laurels? Got to pump some LB content out there, because it's I'm living for it. I find it, as you know, and just like you, Brian, extremely exciting. But wanted to share this with you, this graph, and the audience. Any thoughts, comments on this one, Brian?
Yeah, and also on the other SWC dashboard we're looking at, there's a similar version of this chart, and yeah, the Smarter Web companies align on the chart. It's just incredible. It's absolutely vertical.
I'll get that back. So where do you want me to go on the on this website? Dashboard, MNAV?
It is under BTC accumulation race tab.
Oh, there. Gotcha. Yeah. That is a stunning graph. Do you want to just walk us through it?
Yeah. So basically, what this chart is showing Bitcoin accumulation since day zero. It's readjusted the timeline, so you're looking at everything from day zero to compare how fast they've grown over X amount of days. And a couple things stand out of the chart. Obviously, Smarter Web started from a lower base, but if you look at the way it's just crossing through some of those lines there, it's crossed through the blockchain group's line, it's crossed through MetaPlanet's line, it's headed towards Cooler, it's headed towards Semler, and so basically what that means is at the same point in time, it has accumulated more Bitcoin than those companies did at that point in time. And that's one of the things is so interesting to watch about this company is how long they can keep up that vertical growth, because it's absolutely phenomenal.
I agree. So what I want to say here, as a just to be devil's advocate and the other side of the coin here is that when MetaPlanet was at the stage that SWC is now, there was only one a game in town, more or less. There was MicroStrategy, they were called back then, and of course they had started, but it's not as hot an area in the TradFi investing community and the Bitcoin community as it is now. And because strategy really nailed it, and the epic Q3 earnings call, I recommend everyone to go watch on YouTube from last year from MicroStrategy, as they were called at the time. That has all very strongly increased the interest, which has opened up the wallets, and funds are now flowing faster, I would say, to this space. So just wanting to add that side of the story as well, and say that that MetaPlanet has created so far in Q2 a BTC yield of 108%. And there's another announcement coming before the end of the quarter. It seems likely. So I think just to bear that in mind, that it's different points in time and different investor sentiments that were reigning.
It's absolutely right to bring that up. I was posting about MetaPlanet ever since the very beginning of their strategy, and I can tell you the environment was very different then. Simon Garavich, he posts this slide in his presentation that shows their shareholder meeting 1 month after the start of the strategy and a year after the start of the strategy. And the first room is almost empty, and the second room is it's packed, standing room only. When I first started posting about strategy, or when I first started posting about MetaPlanet, the comment section on my posts felt a lot like that. The comments would be like, they'd get no likes, they get no engagements. If people did comment, they'd say, "Why do we need this when we have strategy?" So it's definitely a very different environment. And one other caveat I would throw out about this chart is that it's possible that we get companies that, as the LB market really heats up, that are able to speed run this chart even more, and even then it won't necessarily be a fair comparison across execution ability of the management teams. It'll be at least in part a reflection of the market that they're operating in, because you can sell more equity into a hot market that's pricing you at a higher MNAV and has a higher appetite for it than you can in a market that doesn't really know who you are yet and doesn't really trust you and is kind of skeptical on the whole LB idea to start with. So there's definitely something to look out for as we watch and compare with other companies that come in the future, and also ones that we've seen in the past.
Yeah. And also, so AC, good to see you there. Let me read up the chat, and then your comment, Brian. So AC is saying, do you guys think the angle of accumulation for the small cap LBs will continue? My sense is the growth will be asymptotic, but I'd love to hear what I'm missing and how could I be wrong. And I guess we already touched upon it a little bit. We both expect that it's steeper when a company is small, has less Bitcoin. It's easier to raise 50 million than 50 billion. But your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, some of the models, a power law curve and a logarithmic curve look somewhat similar to first approximation. They both kind of look like this. The difference is that logarithmic curve is asymptotic and the parallel curve keeps going. And the reason why I bring that up is that I think that growth will look something like one of those curves. Like it probably won't be strictly asymptotic because they can keep going. I mean, if they actually manage to magically get close to 21 million Bitcoin, which they never will, there would obviously be an asymptote there. But yeah, obviously it's mathematically impossible to grow exponentially forever on a finite asset. And
yeah. Yeah, I think I think it was Dan and Mason from True North today that was bantering a bit with saying that they were looking for the companies that was aiming to hold 21 million Bitcoin, and like instead of days to cover, like days to hold 21 million. Obviously, just a good bander. But
yeah, well, at the end of the day, imagine what happens when MicroStrategy or Strategy has, say, 7 million Bitcoin at a MNAV of 3.
yeah. So that's one thing I've been thinking about. I do think it's realistic that companies can be priced accumulative above a money supply. I didn't think so maybe like a year ago, but I think we can't rule that out. And just to touch upon it, as we're talking about evaluation, and I'd love to hear your take. I'm thinking of the end game as someone like Strategy could end up owning 2.1 million Bitcoin, but the evaluation they will have in the market, let's say the fiat is gone, right? Dollar is dead, so stocks are now traded in sats. I could see them being valued at twice of that, because a company will be valued of two components, in my opinion. I could be wrong. One, how much Bitcoin they hold on the balance sheet, and two, the value of the evaluation that is assigned to the revenue and profit they can generate having that balance sheet. What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, two different thoughts there. Yeah, one, I think it really depends what the business model, the end state business model is. If they actually wind up being something that looks like a Bitcoin bank, like an actual bank where they're lending and they have credit facilities and all types of things they're doing. Banks, I believe, a price to book of like 2 is fairly common for a bank. So yeah, a 2x MNAV would be entirely conceivable. The other thought I would throw out there is that I do think the total stock market, this is absolutely going to mess with people's minds. The total stock market cap will be more than 21 million Bitcoin. It will. If you look at the situation today, depending on what figure you look at for M1 or M2, let's say M2 is 20 trillion. I forget what the exact number is. I think it's in the ballpark of 20 trillion. And the total stock market cap is more than that. So already today we've got stock market caps that are higher than the number of dollars in circulation, and it doesn't bother anybody because nobody ever thinks about it. So,
yeah. So we're in agreement there, Brian. I think both of us could see a world where total stock market evaluation is more than the circulation of Bitcoin. And honestly, it makes total sense. So we don't need to beat that horse anymore. I would say we'll just end up killing it, and that's not why we're here. So what else about SWC? So it's phenomenal growth. They keep being very steep in Bitcoin accumulation, despite gaining size. Now they have, if I take a quick look back on the website, they have now 543.5 Bitcoin, and they have cash as well to buy more Bitcoin within the current net asset value. They're killing it.
Yeah, so I think where to from here is perhaps the question, and they do have a lot of potential catalysts in coming up. That the one thing David Bailey has been hinting at is that he wants Spiderweb Company to be listed on the London Stock Exchange with the goal of getting into the FTSE 100. You might ask, why is David Bailey saying that? It's because he's one of the co-founders of UTXO Management, who backs Spiderweb Company and provides them a lot of support. And obviously, Andrew's running the show, but they also have a helping hand in strategy planning. So if Spiderweb were to get listed on the London Stock Exchange today, their market cap is already large enough to be in the FTSE 250. And I believe that the lowest market cap company in the FTSE 100 is $4 billion and change, the equivalent of $4 billion and change US dollars. So, and Spiderweb is right around $1 billion, USD valuation right now. 4x is not that far away from here at the speed they're growing. If they could get listed on the London Stock Exchange, get up in the FTSE 100, that opens up the door to index funds, similar to how in the States people are very excited about strategy getting included in QQQ, the NASDAQ 100, and also potentially the S&P 500, as early as this year. There would be a similar narrative for that, getting included in if they were able to get listed and potentially get in the FTSE 100. But that opens up liquidity, it opens up more fundraising opportunities. Just the uplisting itself would probably generate a price pop instantly. So that's another major thing that's on my radar that's is potentially very interesting.
So that could happen realistically this year, that they get included in the FTSE 100.
It's conceivable. It's definitely not a given. The timeline,
sooner or later, right? And whenever it happens, right? So if it happens in Q4, Q1, it's a catalyst, and we've seen what QQQ did to strategy. That was a very fun October, November last year. And that demand for the stock through the MNAV also allowed strategy to have some amazing Bitcoin buys. There were several weeks where it was 20,000 Bitcoin per week. There was one week there was 55,000 Bitcoin, and that's all spurred by, not all, but a lot is spurred by demand for the stock. And that's what we're seeing with Metaplan as well, very high volume in the stock, and SWC. I believe also Coincilium has a very high volume in their stock.
Yeah, both Spiderweb and Coincilium, they've been fighting for those number 1 and 2 spots on the volume trading leaderboards in the UK. And it's extraordinary because they're both, as I'm sure many people are aware, they're both listed on the Aquis Exchange, which is a minor exchange in the UK. I believe they went that route just because it's shorter and cheaper to get listed there, and it was a way to get listed. But another interesting thing about that is that international access to the Aquis Exchange is also fairly limited. So getting bumped up to the LSE, it not only helps with UK liquidity, it's also going to help with global liquidity. As anyone in America with an Interactive Brokers account is aware, you cannot buy a Spiderweb Company. You can't buy the OTC ticker. You can't buy the direct UK listing.
Yeah.
But if they were to uplist to the London Stock Exchange, that could potentially change and open up access to a whole big new group of investors.
Yeah, and those catalysts are, they're all coming down the line. It's a matter of time. It seems it's more about when than if, and when they do, it's going to be a pump in demand, and therefore the stock price, the ability to sell more stock with a high MNAV and very accretively buy a lot of Bitcoin compared to the little dilution that it'll have to do to the stock. So should be good times ahead. Yeah. What else do you want to cover, Brian, on SWC? We've spoken about management, execution, very steep curve. There's an amazing catalyst like FTSE index, listing on different, just like with in listing more places so more people can have access to buying it. For instance, here in Denmark, where I am at the moment, I can't help any friends or family to get their hands on SWC, and this is in Europe. Like they're right across in the North Sea. Across the North Sea is England, right? But you can't buy it here in Denmark. It's insane, but we can from US. I know. Well, I mean, yeah, I've bought it on Fidelity because they have that OTC listing in US. What else have we touched upon? Well, most importantly, what else would you like to cover on SWC?
Yeah, if we take a look further out into the future, one of the things I always like to think about is I think the Bitcoin treasury companies that have staying power are going to be the ones that are successful at tapping credit markets. You in the early stages of growth, you get a lot of equity sales and ATM-like programs, and you can get very far with that. And companies have even the strategy 4 years into their growth cycle, slap down an ATM and almost double their, actually more than double their Bitcoin. But as we've seen, as a company matures, the big granddaddy of capital pools is the credit markets. We're watching a strategy try to tap the bond market right now by essentially sucking demand out of the bond market into their preferred stocks. And the question in my mind is, okay, well, who else is going to do that? What markets are good for that? The UK market could be a good market for that. And I don't know exactly what shape it might take there. It could be the preferred stock strategy. We could see the playbook innovated on by the time it is even a relevant consideration for them to start doing that. But that's kind of what we're looking forward to. The short term, love to see the equity raises. I think the ATM-like program is a good next step for them. Much longer term, potentially a couple years out, very interested to see how they might start tapping credit markets.
Yeah, it's that will be exciting, just like it will with MetaPlanet, who have registered a company in Florida to tap the international financial markets, capital markets easier, I presume. And personally, I hold Strike in my portfolio on margin. I wouldn't buy it without margin because it's a fixed income product. But on margin, where my cost of holding it is close to what they so only slightly above the return they're giving, the yield they're paying out, but it has that built-in perpetual call option. I think and there's so limited downside that makes that attractive. I would love to hold stocks like that were issued by either MetaPlanet or SWC, because there's a rocket coming behind that to bring up the price of the common stock to the level where that call option kicks in and just keeps pushing up the price of the preferred stock. That could be fun. That could be fireworks in a portfolio, I think.
Yeah, I mean, imagine owning a preferred stock, a convertible preferred stock with a probably won't be a 10% coupon. It won't be a 10% coupon in Japan, but let's say even a 5% coupon with a convertible bond stock or a preferred stock that's convertible, and on a stock that is like 200 vol.
Yeah, it's like I'd own it. I'd love that. Like
it's almost like owning a call option that pays you interest and has no expiration.
Half a year ago, I didn't even know it existed, Brian, but here we are. Again, none of what we're saying is financial advice. We both make mistakes, plenty of them. That's why everyone's got to make their own decision. But in my opinion, something like Strike that has very limited downside, but it has essentially 40% MSTR exposure is very interesting. And especially if furthermore, so if also Metaplanet and SWC would start issuing that, I'm thinking SWC is still quite a bit away from that, because they can just run the ATM like program now and get very far on that, where Metaplanet is getting closer to it, and they have a shareholders meeting in September where they might vote for that. Is the speculation, right?
Yeah, and don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. I mean, this is, I think, a conversation that becomes more relevant, a year, maybe 2 years from now. The credit market conversation is a very forward-looking one.
Yeah, thanks for keeping me grounded, Brian. I do tend to get a little bit far into the future. So back to you.
Yeah, no, in terms of right now, I love the way they're executing. I think they're doing the right things. I'm very excited to see how their ATM-like program does, and how they iterate on that over time.
I guess it's not easy. It's probably not simple either, but it does look a little bit simple when you're not involved in it the same way that Andrew and his team is. But it's a very steep growth curve. The BDC yield is through the roof. And it's just very interesting for you and I, and probably most people watching that, how far it can continue this steep, because it's steep, and they're getting close to 1,000 Bitcoin, and you run that level of growth a little bit further, and soon you're at 5,000-10,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah, if I've seen it plotted out that if they're able to continue the current rate of growth, they could overtake Metaplanet by October. I think that's quite aggressive. If they could pull that off, I would be absolutely amazed. But again, those are projections based off of just extrapolating from exponential growth curves, which is
yeah. And I just see like Metaplanet is just executing so flawless, and we're seeing an acceleration of Metaplanet's doing. So I don't think it will happen, but let's say it's a very interesting development to look at. I tweeted out yesterday that something along the lines of there is actually a chance that that a Metaplanet could overtake Strategy in amount of Bitcoin, and then I gave it a 1 to 1,000th chance that SWC could, which I think most people will laugh at because they only hold 500 Bitcoin, right? Strategy holds almost 700,000. But compound growth is something not to underestimate.
Yeah, absolutely. People always like to ask for projections, but how many coins are they gonna hold this year? How many coins are they gonna hold next year? When you're dealing with growth at this rate, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with those projections because the error bars are so wide. The range of possible outcomes is very, very wide. But the way this is the way I look at it, which is again, I'll throw in the not financial advice caveat, that is the potential orders of magnitude larger than it is right now, and do I like management? Does the business have potential orders of magnitude larger than it is right now? If the answer to both of those questions is yes, then it's something I like.
Yeah, so another thing I want to just share, because SWC is actually going through a bit of a correction. A pretty steep correction. So this is, I'm sharing now the last month price development of SWC. And a month ago, they were trading below $1. And then last week, they went all the way to, I think they were, a high of $9. And now they're at 416, which is funny because last Tuesday I paid for 19. So now for the first time, I'm in red. But I'm laughing because we know how volatile this is, and if you can't hack the volatility, you should get the hell out of Dodge. but I don't. So, what's your speculation to this correction? My guesswork would be that a part of this capital raise also means that a lot of shares is issued, and I'm just seeing this as a buying opportunity. I could be very wrong. What's your take, Brian, on this correction?
Yeah, I'm going to use the word that you often hear from analysts that I think is almost a cliche. This looks like a healthy pullback. So, yeah, in my opinion, price action, not just with Smarter Web, but really across the board, was very hot last week. These things don't go up in a straight line. I'm not really at all concerned about seeing pullbacks this week. I do think, despite it being a cliche saying that it is a healthy pullback, the market needs a chance to digest this growth to build a base for the next leg up. Even looking at this price now, like the chart we were looking at earlier, it's still almost a 17x MNAV, and it's not like the company has collapsed or anything. And they've got another capital raise coming that could potentially double the NAV within the next day. So, I'm not concerned about this at all. I think this kind of volatility is just par for the course. There's so much more coming that I am not worried about this at all.
I think it's me either. And the way I look at it, SWC and Metaplanet are the hottest leveraged Bitcoin equities right now. Strategy, I think, will be kicked back to life with a likely S&P 500 inclusion, and it's also completely de-risked at this point. Strategy, so there's plenty of reasons, I would say, to hold that. And then there's some other fast horses out there. Obviously, Concilium, I had the CEO and advisor on earlier today on my channel. They're running hot in UK as well. And then I'm looking forward to having the CEO of H100 on this channel on Monday. Andrew from SWC will be back here for the next Smarter Web Wednesdays. That'll be episode 3. So that's 1 week from now. And then on the Thursday, I'm having Alexandra from ALTBG, the blockchain group in Paris, on the channel. After that, I'm going to take a week's holiday, Brian.
Well-deserved break.
I'm at a point where this is almost everything I do, and I forget if I did 1 or 2 shows earlier today, and what's planned in the future. But I love this. This is the most exciting space to be in, I think, right now, and value growth is part of it. What else haven't we covered that you think is important, Brian?
I really think we've hit all the major points as far as Smarter Web Company is concerned. Just hearing about your upcoming content, I think H100 will be a nice entrant in the race that will be fun to watch. Duel the other companies up here in the near future. So I'll definitely be interested to check out that content as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I am. So I'm curious. Which leveraged Bitcoin equities do you hold a position in right now, if you don't mind sharing? I mean, obviously we don't talk sizes or anything.
I'd rather not say everything that I'm holding right now.
Okay.
I'll play that one a little bit closer to my chest.
Fair enough.
But, I just say that broadly speaking, I'm interested in the newer international ones.
Yeah. So another dynamic that I'm very interested in and have spent some time thinking about throughout my week in Prague for BTC Prague, where there were plenty of great fireside chats and presentations, is how many successful, really runaway LBEs can one market hold? And I'm talking about nation, and then also globally. The way I look at it is that well, that's my current thinking, and then I want to hear your opinion, is that each country will be able to sustain at least one very successful leverage Bitcoin equity. But I also do think that there will be one global that will just get outsized capital from around the world. If we think that is Metaplanet, if we think it's SWC, if strategy might come back into play again, or whatever it may be, where if that is the one that has the best growth and an attractive MNAV, then that will get money from all over the world, right? Where the national market is sustained by tax advantageous accounts, where you can buy the local stock, and it can be sometimes the only exposure to Bitcoin, like for the Ether accounts in UK where you can't buy ETFs. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually have some pretty strong opinions on that. I think
Good.
One thing that is a little bit different about me than I think a lot of people in the space is that I come from a background in marketing. I'm not originally a TradFi guy. I come from a background in marketing.
Same here. Funny.
Yeah, there we go. So there's this idea called, there's this book that spawned the same idea called positioning, and one of the topics in the book is what a typical market structure looks like. And a typical market structure is you have a dominant number one player, and then a large number two player that is something like half the size. And I think that is probably what the end state will look like globally. There'll be a large number one, there will be a smaller number two, and then there'll be a very, very distant number third, and the long tail will start from there. That said, that's the global picture. I do think each market can sustain a number one. I call it the hometown hero. That's my phrase for it. I think each market gets their own hometown hero. And all you have to do is look in these communities. Look in the Smarter Web community. Look in, there's a community set up for H100. And people are just so excited to see these companies set up in their home countries. They've been looking at strategy for years, thinking, well, why don't we have something like that here? And then when it shows up, they're super excited about it. And also, there's just all kinds of friction that's reduced by having a home market offering. It's not even just tax advantages and trading fees. There are there's pension funds and other kinds of funds out there that have mandates to only invest in domestic stocks. And so no matter how great the number one global company is, if they've got a mandate to only invest in domestic stocks, they can't put money in it. And they will obviously prefer the domestic one. So yeah, big picture, that's my thesis. Number one, large number one, obviously going to be strategy. No one's going to unseat them ever. The global race is for number two. Could be Metaplanet, could be Smart Web Company. Who knows? It's going to be a good battle to see. And then I think each market does get their number one, possibly their number two. Coincilium, I think, is an interesting test case to watch, because UK market is really the first one where we've seen a strong second entrant. Japan still really is a one-horse race, but the UK, we've seen Coincilium be very strong. And so I think that second mover case study is going to be very interesting to watch in terms of giving us a picture of what that could look like as more of these roll out in other countries.
No, absolutely agree. And I mentioned that this morning when I had the guys on from Concilium, that to me, that is a perfect test case of whether a market can sustain two or more successful LBs. And if you're saying, that number two typically can achieve half size or whatever, and it doesn't have to be the same here, but that's an interesting idea, and it'll be very exciting to see how those two they play out.
Yep, definitely. I've got my eye on that narrative. It's been very fun to watch play out, because to my eye it looks like they're just basically a couple weeks behind Smarter Web Company in terms of trajectory. It'll be interesting to see if that continues.
Yeah, very much so. But we'll keep our eyes on that here. And Brian, you will hopefully be back on here many times on either one of the shows or the other of the shows. But it's all about leveraged Bitcoin equities. So tomorrow I have James, who's covering SWC a lot locally. Again, talking about hometown hero. And the UK's natural love for their local successful LBs. So James, who's very into SWC, will be on my channel here, and that will be 2:30 p.m. UK time. So that will be 8:30 p.m. I got to be careful now. Eastern time, AM Eastern time. It'll be AM anyway in AM in US. It'll be there when you wake up. And then furthermore, I'm going to take the Friday off. I'll be doing something else. And then Monday, I'll be back with CEO Mr. Anderson from H100. And then you guys will have a chance to catch Brian here again, together with Climb and Christina, and hopefully also Blake on Tuesday for MetaPlanet Roundtable 5. We're already up to 5 MetaPlanet roundtables. And then just checking the calendar here, Wednesday next week, so 1 week from now, will be Smarter Web Wednesdays with Andrew Webley, back a second time. Andrew and I had a good chat post the last stream where he was on, and so far he's happy to come back every second week and give us an update on Smarter Web companies. So that will be exciting. And then on the Thursday will be Alexander from the blockchain group. So plenty of content in the LBE space coming your way on this channel. It's streamed both on X and on YouTube. You can watch wherever you like. So yeah, Brian, with that, again, just thank you so much. I really appreciate your takes, and I think we have to be very close to getting you from underappreciated, underrated analyst to at least an appropriately rated analyst in Q3, and then in Q4, I think we're going to try and get a home run and get you all the way up where you deserve to be. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Anything you want to add here on the final?
Yes, if we get to that appropriately rated stating, then the words of Andrew Webley, I would say that's very okay. So just
good one.
Thanks for having me on. Happy to talk Smarter Web Company. Definitely I'll give a shout out to James. Give him a watch. Met him in Vegas. Great guy. Has done a great job putting out the Smarter Web content. I'll be watching him as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't spoken with him yet. Only with DM, but I'm very much looking forward. He might be watching right now, or maybe he'll watch it. Pardon me, or watch on replay. But James, yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. So again, thank you very much, guys, for watching, guys and gals. 769 live viewers. Appreciate it very much. Without you guys, there wouldn't be any content from here. It's only fun when there's some interaction and people have an interest for it. So thank you, Brian, and I will see you again on Tuesday, unless we figure out another show before then.
Yep, sounds good. We'll see everybody next Tuesday.
All right. Have a great afternoon in US.
All right.